We say hello to the final homestand of the regular season. The Sox have the first of 7. It's a 4-game series against the Tampa Bay Rays in for the first time and only time this year. Thanks for joining us once again. Jason Benetti, Steve Stone along with you. The playoffs have sailed for both of these teams, but for the Sox especially, there's some guys that are trying to cement their spot for next year.
This time of year, really what you have is personal statistics. You have the ability to impress upon the brass that you should be considered for spring training next year and possibly a spot on the roster. That's what these guys have to play for. For the Tampa Bay Rays, what they're playing for is possibly the first pick in the draft, although it's going to be tough. They trail by 2 games. This is a team looking forward. Both teams are. And hopefully tonight we'll see some good solid baseball with a nice pitching matchup.
On that matchup, it's a former Tampa Bay Devil Ray himself, James Shields, going for the Sox. On the other side, Drew Smyly for Tampa.
There's no doubt that Drew Smyly's a good left-hand pitcher, although he hasn't thrown as well as they would have liked since coming over from Detroit. But in his last 11 starts at 5-0, the ERA 3.6, the opponent's batting average at 220. That part of it's been good. He was supposed to come over and be a star. Hasn't worked out quite that way yet. James Shields against his former mates, 2-0 with an ERA of 1.29. This has been a terribly disappointing year for him. He's 3-11 for our Sox, but hopefully he can turn it around and maybe last couple of times out throw the ball a bit better than he's been throwing it.
Some career highs are on the board for the Sox as well. Sox trying to build on those. Jose Abreu has been absolutely fantastic in the second half. Todd Frazier still bashing home runs. They're in the lineup tonight. It's Rays and Sox.
part by Toyota. Discover more in a Toyota. Visit buyatoyota.com or your local Toyota dealer today. Let's go places. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Illinois. Through it all. Audi. Truth in engineering. And by Xfinity. Xfinity X1 will change the way you experience TV.
Summer went away pretty quickly. Darkness has fallen before our first pitch tonight at U.S. Cellular Field. Rays and Sox coming up, and the Sox chasing down some milestones, at least individually, as it currently stands, with the Sox at 74 and 81. Todd Frazier needs a home run and 4 knocked in to become the 6th player in Sox history with 40 and 100 in a year. Abreu needs to amp up the home run numbers to get to Pujols as the only players in Major League history with 30 homers and 100 knocked in each of the first 3 seasons. But regardless of whether or not Jose Abreu hits those numbers, it has been a remarkable surge in the final 2 months of the season for Jose Abreu.
Well, he's gotten red hot. And right now he's trying to put the pedal to the metal to try to get those numbers as the White Sox take the field.
You know, one thing about nighttime starts, with darkness having already surrounded the ballpark, is the fireworks are even more stark as the Sox take the field. Tampa Bay Rays starting lineup, written out by Kevin Cash. It's presented by Kia, and it starts with Logan Forsythe, then Corey Dickerson and Evan Longoria. Brad Miller, the left-handed power hitter, then Mikey Matuk, Jeff Decker, Kurt Casale, and our old friend Alexei Ramirez and Bobby Wilson, your starting 9 for the Rays.
Let's take a look at the Honda City defensive setup, how Robin is going to put him out there behind James Shields. Melky Cabrera, Yuri Garcia, Abisail Garcia in the outfield. For Todd Frazier, Tim Anderson, Carlos Sanchez, and Jose Abreu in the infield. Omar Narvaez gets a nod behind the plate, and our Lexus pursuing perfection starting pitcher is James Shields. Throwing against a team that brought him to the major leagues. Those are the numbers combined from San Diego and our Sox. At 5-18 is ERA, up close to 6. He's had his problems in the early innings. If he can get by those, he should throw the ball pretty well. And this is a Tampa Bay team that has a few young players, but not many, that are trying to show they're ready for prime time. So the umpires and how they line up tonight. Greg Gibson behind the plate. Mike Esterbrook is at first base. The crew chief, Ben May, is at second. And Ed Hickox is at third. There is the skipper of this Tampa Bay team, Kevin Cash. And he realizes it's just been a bad year all the way around. Although individually they've had some guys having great years. Evan Longoria with a huge bounce back year, 36 home runs, 95 driven in. Brad Miller's hit 30 home runs, which is somewhat surprising for Miller, who has not been known as a big power hitter. They've moved him to second base. They believe that that's a position he's going to play next year, actually playing first base tonight. But Alexei Ramirez has taken over at shortstop. That's where Miller did play.
Yeah, Tampa hasn't hit the ball very well all year long. .244 the team batting average. That's last in the American League. .309 on base. That's second worst in the American League, only to the Oakland Athletics. So we are ready to go. Tampa with 65 wins, 90 losses. The Sox 74 up, 81 down after winning 2 of 3 against the Cleveland Indians, including 2 straight upon departure of Steve Stone's hometown. First pitch, a strike to Logan Forsythe tonight at 7-11.
Logan Forsythe, a pretty solid player regardless of where they put him. These days, he's residing at second base.
29-year-old second baseman with a drive to left field. Melky going back on it to make the catch at the warning track. 1 down, first inning.
Good thing that it's chilly at the ballpark, because on those warm summer days, this breaking ball might have been more problems than it was, as Melky going to his right, able to run it down, and that one on the track, but it stayed in the park.
You know, in all fairness to the Rays, considering their difficulty getting on base, the one thing Tampa has done well this season is hit the long ball, third best in the American League in home runs. And you mentioned a couple of the big guns with Longoria and Miller really contributing.
Especially when you consider their home park is not known as a hitter's park. I'm not sure if you see the ball quite as well in Tampa as you do in other domes specifically. But most guys will tell you that that is not ideal for swinging the bat.
Boy, it's been a long time since the Sox played in Tampa. It was back in April, and the Rays won 2 of 3 in that series. The only win for the Sox was the Chris Sale 1-0 complete game shutout, the first 1-0 shutout of his career for Robin Ventura.
At that point for the Rays, things look pretty decent for them.
Injuries have not helped, that's sure. Steven Souza Jr. among the shelved in Tampa Bay.
Souza had a little hip surgery, which will put him out. They don't anticipate that that's going to affect him next year. But he's one of the guys they counted on to provide a little power in the outfield.
Former Washington National. 2-1 from Shields to his former team. And it's 2-2 on Corey Dickerson, who's hitting .247 this year. The slugging percentage is up at .477. With 36 doubles for Dickerson this season.
This year he's hit much better on the road than at home, which is somewhat surprising because he's from the Colorado Rockies, where you always hit better at home than on the road.
Shields gets rid of Dickerson, and 2 down in the first inning.
Throws him a straight change, and he has Dickerson well out in front of it. And here's the guy that most every team wouldn't mind having at third base.
Well, you talked about the bounce back year for Evan Longoria, and his on base plus slugging is the highest he's had it since 2010. And I know people aren't noticing because the Rays have struggled this year, but the numbers are there to continue pushing him up to that stardom status.
Well, last year he had 21 home runs. He drove in 73. So granted, didn't have a whole lot of help in their lineup, but it's not exactly like he's got Babe Ruth hitting behind him most of the time this year. So Longoria just has really kicked up the power numbers and got a legitimate shot at 100 driven in.
Ball outside, 3-0 on Longoria, who still does not have a hit in his career against James Shields. Former teammates in Tampa. .3-0 from Shields. That's right there, strike one.
Extra base hits. David Ortiz, Brian Dozier, and Longoria and Machado tied at 77.
I look at the company Dozier has inserted himself into.
Dozier's having an enchanted year. We're going to see him tail end of this homestand.
That's going to be fun to watch exactly how well he's hitting the ball right now.
Well, I would think with the kind of year he's had, you make a mistake on him at all, he hits it hard. More amazing to me than that is looking at the numbers across the board of Big Papi at 40 years old. They're magnificent.
3-2 is low. Ball 4. Longoria walks with 2 out in the first. His Red Sox have won now 11 in a row. They're running away with the AL East, which was rather bunched up before this streak started.
Yeah, Boston had the best team, the best lineup. The question was, could they coordinate the starting rotation, which has been good, with a bullpen that was a little shaky, especially with Kimbrel hurt. Now the bullpen has come back and done very well, and the starting rotation has really come together to go with an offense that's been very good all year long.
Consistently tremendous. So Brad Miller with Longoria at first. And there's strike one.
Time now for the greater coverage of baseball, brought to you by T-Mobile, and it is that 11-game winning streak. They've averaged over 5 runs a game. They've homered in all 11. The ERA terrific. They struck out 11 straight of these Rays hitters yesterday. And the bullpen, well, they got a 1-point ERA. So the 11-game winning streak has showed you they can play. And they've made what was going to be just a wonderful race in the East. They made it into a shambles. Now it's a race for the wild card.
That 11 straight strikeout game, the Rays struck out 23 times in that game. That leaves 4 outs that weren't strikeouts.
Yeah, that's kind of deceiving, though, because they weren't swinging it all that well.
Good point.
I'd give the game ball to the 4 guys who made contact.
Ball to 2 strikes on Miller. with Longoria at first inning. Tonight, game 1 of 4, Sox and Rays.
Miller came from Seattle. And when you take a look at the home runs, the most he ever hit for Seattle was last year. He hit 11 of them. This year, 30. This year's got a chance, by the way, percentage-wise, to be the best home run year ever in the history of the game.
Ball and 2 strikes from Shields. Miller, center field, and over the head of Garcia into the stands, and that saves the Sox a run. Longoria has to freeze at third as Miller absolutely scalded that baseball.
29th double, and that one right over the head of Leury. Leury was playing him in a perfect spot. This is a slider down, or a cutter from James Shields, and it's right over the head of Leury, who took 2 steps in. It's doubtful if he had this one anyway, and the break was 1 hop out of the ballpark. Otherwise, Longoria scores the first run, but he's now at third base with a chance to get out of this first inning.
So Mikey Matuk, the center fielder, 2 out, 2 on. And ball 1 to Matuk, who's got 161 at bats under his belt so far this year. (1-0). Here's a strike from Shields, ball and a strike. So the first 2, a fly out and a strikeout. Then Longoria the walk, and Miller the ground rule double to put 2 in scoring position for the Rays. Yeah, the dirt.
Nice smother by Omar Narvaez as he took a breaking ball away and made sure that Evan Longoria could not advance. Shifts to his right, off the glove, off the chest protector, and didn't get away far enough.
Omar's been busy early on balls in the dirt so far tonight. 2-1. In the air, right-hand side. Avi Garcia plants and makes the catch to retire the side. Longoria and Miller stranded. No score after a half inning. Garcia.
The Honda City defense, and now Kevin Cash is going to line them up. It's Dickerson, Matuk, and Decker in the outfield, and that is Jeff, even though it's spelled Jeff. That's Longoria, Ramirez, Forsythe, and Miller in the infield with Bobby Wilson, the venerable Bobby Wilson behind the plate. And our Lexus pursuing perfection starting pitcher is Drew Smyly. Smyly at 7-11 with an ERA of 4.86, although lately throwing the ball pretty well. He has allowed 32 home runs.
Todd Andrew Smyly. He's taken on the name Drew, short for his middle name, former second-round pick of the Tigers 6 years ago. And he quickly is up 0-2 on Tim Anderson. Up and out, 1-2.
Smiley 6'3", 190 pounds. And was traded from Detroit.
Check swing in the dirt. He didn't go. 2-2.
It was in the David Price deal.
He was 2 selections ahead of Andrelton Simmons back in 2010 and 5 selections after Jake Petrichka. 2-2. Check swing again. He did go this time, says Mike Estabrook. And Anderson rung up on strike 3.
We'll take a look from the side, and that call could have gone either way. Mike Estabrook thought it went Smiley's way, much to the dismay of Tim Anderson.
If only there were a rule about a swing that we could compare that to.
I have it in my rules book.
You do? You found it?
Not to be confused with baseball rules book. It's not in there.
You just created your own rule book.
I did.
I see. Ball to strike on Melky, who with 39 doubles is 5 shy of his career high from 5 years ago with Kansas City.
When Melky was with Kansas City, their entire outfield had at least 40 doubles. It was a remarkable bit of offense, and also they could field and they could all throw. Pretty good outfield, but 3 across the board with at least 40 doubles. Probably we're not going to see that too much anymore.
Into right center field from Melky and rolling all the way to the wall. Speaking of doubles, Melky cruises into second with his 40th.
He crushed that ball to right center field, and you know, I don't even know whose pick to click he is, but I will tell you, on the 40th double,
spare us.
He deserves to be the pick to click. It's hard to get 40 doubles.
Yeah, all 40 didn't happen tonight, so the lifetime achievement pick to click is unavailable.
I told you, I don't know who picked him. I'm just saying.
Okay, this is a hypothetical that you're offering? Is
hypothetically, yes.
Melky at second, 1 out. And Jose 3 points shy of 300 to take ball 1. Morneau to follow, then Frazier. Sox trying to build on 2 wins in a row against Cleveland to end that road trip. Big rip at 91, ball to strike.
Joe McEwing at third base realizes that Jose is knocking at the door of 100 runs driven in. So if it's even close, he's going to be sending whoever it is out at second base. In this case, it's Melky.
Rip to left field. Dickerson's on it quickly, and no send from Joe McEwing because of that ball being absolutely battered by Abreu.
Yeah, unfortunately, he hit it right at Dickerson. A vicious one-hopper, and there was no chance. That ball got to Dickerson long before Melky got to third base.
Let's show everyone our picks to click just to see who's been chosen today. Steve in second place in a tie with the crew. I'm in first. How about that? Who knew? And the fans, you the fan, going with Jose Abreu at WhiteSox.com/pick to click.
I thought it was a wise pick for you to take Sherm Lawler originally, but you switched to Leori.
You know, look, with picks to click, we should think about an addendum where we can select players on the opposing team who have played for the White Sox. What do you say?
You can certainly do that.
I wouldn't do it.
In this particular game,
offering it to the fans if they were huge Alexei Ramirez supporters.
Would be fine.
1-0 on Morneau. Yeah, that's a strike. Justin, who's recovering from what he deemed old man neck.
If you have any kind of disc problems in your neck, it's going to be difficult because sometimes they move out of alignment and there's not much that you can do.
It's ball low, 2-1. Cabrera a double, Abreu a single, 1 out. First inning, Sox trying to get on the board first in this series.
Smiley's allowed at least a home run in each of his last 7 games. That usually does not bode well for his particular outing.
Two balls, 2 strikes.
And Drew Smiley has always been and is currently a fly ball pitcher.
Has not lost a game since July the 18th. That ball smoked to center field. Mikey Matuk is there. Melky tags from third, and Justin Morneau drives him in. RBI number 23 for Morneau, and a 1-0 Sox lead in the first.
And the only problem with being a fly ball pitcher is when you could dearly use a ground ball double play. More times than not, you're going to throw one in the air, and Justin Morneau hit the daylights out of that one.
So 1 in, 1 on. Todd Frazier looking for elusive home run number 40. First pitch a strike, 0-1. The Rays come in having lost 6 of 7. 3-game sweep against the Red Sox. A 1. Called a strike, couple of off-speed pitches, 0-2. And that'll do it for Frazier. Bookend strikeouts for Smiley, but the Sox get a run. Melky scored by Morneau. It's 1-0 Sox. Early in the morning yesterday, the Marlins back on the field to play the Mets after the cancellation yesterday. And D. Gordon, the opening batter of the game, stood in the right-hand batter's box initially. Then a couple pitches later, moved over to the left-hand side and did this. the opening batter of the game, with all of the emotion flowing out and all of his teammates, including himself, wearing Jose Fernandez's number 16 jersey. It took minutes for D. Gordon to get down into the dugout and through the tunnel with the line of hugs that he was met with in Miami, and a truly stunning moment in baseball history. The opening batter after Jose Fernandez's death for the Miami Marlins goes deep.
Pretty amazing, because that's the first home run of the year for D. Gordon. So he took one pitch, right-handed, with Jose Fernandez's batting helmet. And he turned around, took one more pitch from the left side, and then hit the third pitch he saw out of the park. Pretty amazing.
It's, you know, you hear often about situations involving mothers lifting a bus off their child or something like that, the superhuman strength that pops up in situations of need. And while this was a little different and a day off, D. Gordon and that real emotion that we just saw was one of the more human things you're going to see on a baseball field. 2-2 on Decker, the leadoff batter for the Tampa Bay Rays here in the second inning. Shields gets a ground ball back to the mound, and out number 1. Jose Fernandez is Cuban, defected, and grew up essentially as a high school pitcher in Tampa. And so there's a definite connection with the area, and a connection with especially players who have come through Cuba. And Alexei Ramirez was the guy charged with hanging up the Jose Fernandez 16 jersey in the Rays dugout, and it will be there for the game tonight. So one down for Curt Casali, the designated hitter for the Rays. Jose Fernandez was a state champion with Alonso High School back in 2011 in the Tampa area. And he not only was a pitcher, but he was a batter as well. The game that got his high school into the state championship game, Fernandez had a key home run to get them into the title game. And when the Sox were down in Miami earlier this year, got a chance to watch Jose Fernandez take batting practice. As Casali, it's a fly ball to center field. Leury Garcia is under it for out number 2. And it was so entertaining to watch the guy swing it, because you could tell the magnetizing presence people are talking about existed. I mean, he was just the guy having fun in the cage, and lost way too soon. The return to U.S. Cellular Field of Alexei Ramirez. Well missed.
And he was a very popular player here. Spent a lot of time at shortstop. And the one thing that you always had to say about him, for better or worse, or anything that went on, he wanted to play each and every day. He was one of those guys that if he could play 162, he was the happiest man around.
Some years 163.
I mean, it was pretty amazing as durable as he was.
He's even got the Jose Fernandez number 16 on the eye black today for his countrymen. Ball and a strike on Ramirez, who played 1,200 plus games with the Sox. One from Shields. It's a nice breaking ball, 1-2.
Actually hit 240 with San Diego in the National League. Drove in 41 runs in 128 games before finding his way to Tampa Bay. Things have not worked out for him very well there, however.
6 out of 33 so far. He's actually had more at-bats against James Shields in his career than he has currently for the Rays by 25.
58 at-bats is a lot of familiarity.
Popped him up, back of home, and it's into row number 2.
James Shields can get out of this particular inning, and he's 2 outs into the second. He'll get rid of two of his biggest problems. First and second innings total this year. 23 home runs combined and 58 runs given up in the first and second innings. So that's been very difficult for James.
ERAs of 7.84 and 10.20 in those innings. That he will escape untouched this evening. 1-2-3 inning for Shields. As we remember Jose Fernandez, 24 years old.
Time later in the game brought to you by Miller Lite.
I look forward to that, and you know who might be enjoying one of those right now at home. He's off today. Dan Hayes, our White Sox insider all season long on CSNChicago.com, presented by The Great Escape. Pools, patio furniture, hot tubs, and more. Escape your everyday. Shop The Great Escape.
Greg Gibson had a little time off, sauntering back from the Sox dugout.
Our plate umpire is back. And Avi Garcia is in the batter's box. 1 for 9 in that first series against Tampa Bay when the Sox were in Florida back in April. Drew Smyly touched up for a run in the first inning. Sox have the lead, and Avi takes an off-speed strike. Well, the Dodgers yesterday won the National League West. They clinched off Charlie Culberson's first home run of the year. And so the divisions that are still available are decreasing in number. Cleveland can clinch tonight against the Tigers.
Yeah, that's a fait accompli. The races are for wild card, and they're wildly entertaining.
That National League race continues to bounce back and forth as Avi goes down hunting. Third strikeout for Smyly. The Cardinals, who have not had a run off Aroldis Chapman in 5 years, lost to the Cubs last night and dropped a half game out of the wild card.
Well, I suppose you think that that's bad.
Yes, it's been a while, let's say. Just when they think they're rid of Aroldis Chapman, right? He's in New York. It's the other league. He's back in the division again. Here's strike one to Omar Narvaez. Oh, and 2, so Smyly gets Avi swinging on 3 pitches. Then Narvaez down 0-2, 5 pitches, 5 strikes.
Last 11 starts, he's been pretty good. And just a question of doing away with a lot of his straight change. Got a pretty good curveball. He can throw it a couple different speeds. He's actually using the curveball as a straight change, as his change hasn't worked that well. But they still hold high hopes for Drew Smyly. They believe he's going to be, at the very least, the middle of the rotation starting pitcher. Perhaps a little bit higher than that. There's a young fan.
A wide-eyed youngster.
Certainly enjoying whatever it is he happens to be eating. Looks like some seeds of some sort.
Got him eaten out of his hand. Up and in, 2-2 on Narvaez. 84 starts, 31-26 for the left-hander out of Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas, the iconic school. 2-2. Fly ball left side. Dickerson was playing in, and he is in foul territory to make the catch for the second out. Join us for the White Sox Bags Tournament October 1st at U.S. Cellular Field. Grab a partner and come out to the tournament. See if you can win the tournament and take home a cash prize. For more information or to purchase tickets or both, visit whitesox.com/bags.
Have you narrowed down your selection for partner yet?
Well, I had a choice. My first choice declined the offer.
Well, obviously I had to recuse myself, as they say.
You did.
Yeah, being prize money and all, and being a former professional, I wouldn't think that would be fair.
You were a former professional bag player?
Bagpipes, actually. Is that what this is?
It's not. Nope.
Are you sure?
I think it's not bagpipes. Yeah. Ground ball. That's through. Carlos Sanchez, who had a nice road trip, is on with a 2-out single.
Carlos has been hitting him pretty well. And so he's getting an opportunity to do something he didn't think he would be doing, and that's playing a whole lot of second base. But with Brett Lawrie hurt, it's really opened the door for a lot of guys who might not have had that opportunity. Tyler Saladino, one of them. Carlos Sanchez, another one of those. To a certain extent, Leury Garcia getting his opportunity. He's another infielder who can play the outfield. He's playing center field. Adam Eaton still feeling the effects of running into the wall in Cleveland, so hopefully he'll be back.
Adam has said he's sore all over.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't have a chance to brace himself whatsoever. It really was a choice, and I think it was a conscious choice. When he stepped on the warning track, he knew that to catch that ball, he was going to run right into the wall. And he had no chance to protect himself, so he had a choice. Catch it and take the beating, or let it go. Well, Adam is not a let-it-go kind of guy. Right there, as soon as it hit the glove, he hits the wall. He can't protect himself, and he says the toughest part of this was he knocked the wind out, and he was laying there and couldn't get his breath back. I think as younger kids, that has happened to a few of us. As adults, it very rarely happened, but that was pretty frightening for him, and we were hoping it was not a concussion or something worse like a separated shoulder the way he hit the wall.
Danny Nobler, the baseball writer, just had a story today about Zach Britton. When he was 15 years old, the Orioles now closer, running headlong into a light standard and fracturing his skull on a ball in the outfield. He was an outfielder when he was young, and some of his teammates didn't know if he'd get back on the diamond.
When he started his career, he started as a starting pitcher, and things were not going to go well for him as a starter. He was an adequate starter. He's become an overwhelming closer. So things have turned for the best for Zach Britton, and he will be in the race for Cy Young Award.
High fly ball, left center field. Matuk is drifting to make the catch. 2-out single for Sanchez, and he's stranded. We've played 2 tonight. It's 1-0 Sox.
6:30 with White Sox pregame live presented by the Koalas family of dealerships on CSN Plus.
You going to be there?
I wouldn't miss it for the world. Chris Sale? Wow. Yes. Must see baseballing.
There's a line drive to left field for Bobby Wilson. It's a leadoff single here in the third for Tampa Bay. By the way, you're not missing much. It's only 7-0 Saints on the football game. It's not like there's a debate going on, right? How about this? You and I
Yes.
will debate during the broadcast for the people who need their debate fix.
Oh, terrific. What would you like to debate about?
Well, I don't know. The Twitter people can send in their ideas.
Okay.
Just tweet at us at Jason Benetti, at Steve Stone. We'll debate whatever you want us to debate as long as you stick with us.
As usually happens, I will take the right side of the debate. You can take the wrong side.
You're going to take us back to Clown Town, aren't you?
Well, it's a wonderful neighborhood. The real estate is exceptionally cheap.
A lot of peanuts and restaurants in Clown Town. Call 1 to Forsyth.
Indians leading Detroit 4-2 in a game that could lock everything up for the Tribe. Their magic number down to 1.
Third base, Frazier tees up Sanchez, who turns it for 2. 5, 4, 3.
Easy way to dispatch a leadoff base hit, a double play. Carlos across the bag and a pretty easy 5-4-3. So Forsythe grounds into just his 8th double play of the year. Somewhat remarkable because he's been to bat 485 times.
2 down off that double play, and Dickerson, who struck out in the first. Sox lead on a sacrifice fly that came 4 batters in off the bat of Justin Morneau. By the way, Roger Bossard and his crew have done a great job getting this field ready for play after the very successful Chance the Rapper concert over the weekend.
There was a whole lot of really good entertainers there.
Kanye was there.
And what, they drove for 48,000 people here? Huge crowd. And the field looks terrific.
1-1. He's inside. 2-1 on Corey Dickerson. I thought you were going to fly from Cleveland, do a portion of the game in Cleveland, charter a plane, and come see a part of the concert.
Well, actually, I was going to, but when I did call NJet, well, they were fresh out.
Out of jets?
Out of jets, yes. No Sharks, no Jets.
2 balls and 2 strikes on Dickerson, and I got to tell you, 1957, today in 1957, West Side Story debuted. How about that?
Pretty good.
2-2. Hits him. Da-da-da, da-da-da.
And that one is going to take a while to shake off for Corey Dickerson as he gets hit just above the right knee. Or maybe on the right knee, on the outside of it.
Not going to be needing that bat.
It's Rocco Baldelli. What a really good player for the Tampa Bay Rays. Had some illness problems, and that really short-circuited his career. Kevin Cash out to have a look. Now, if the ball moves slowly enough, it won't hurt. But it doesn't, and it does hurt. go out now. Narvaez talking with Shields. You know, interesting. The year that Evan Longoria was coming out of Long Beach State, there was no doubt he was going to be a high pick in the draft. And Colorado Rockies had an opportunity at him because they picked number 2. Tampa picked number 3. Well, they decided for whatever reason that they wouldn't take Evan Longoria. Can you imagine what the left side of the infield would have looked like for the Colorado Rockies to have Evan Longoria at third and Troy Tulowitzki at shortstop?
That's scary.
That would have been an unbelievable left side. There you look at the numbers career-wise. Longoria is the face of the franchise, and they would love to be able to build around him, but the building hasn't been all that easy for Tampa.
They've had prospects come through. They've traded a significant amount of those prospects, guys like Will Myers, among others.
Well, Myers came to them in a deal that sent James Shields and Wade Davis to Kansas City. And they got Kansas City's number 1, and that was Will Myers. But Myers hadn't figured it out. He didn't figure it out with Kansas City. He didn't figure it out with Tampa. But this year, he started to figure it out with San Diego. Not a great place for a right-hand hitter to hit. But Myers is having a terrific year. And finally, what they thought of when they saw him and made him the number 1 pick of the Kansas City Royals, he finally is achieving a couple of organizations down the road.
2 balls and a strike on Longoria. Dickerson at first and a high foul ball.
This year, Will Myers with 28 home runs and 92 driven in for a team in San Diego that is not doing all that well in a ballpark that if you're a right-handed pull hitter, that's fine because it's easy to hit home runs if you're a pull hitter. If you're not, that becomes a difficult park to hit.
Padres 66 and 90. James Shields' former team, his 2-2 is off the plate. 3-2.
Now we'll see if Jose, and he is, he's going to hold Dickerson close at first.
Brad Miller.
Ooh, that was a stereo Brad Miller in the on-deck circle.
Doubled in the first. 3-2. Dickerson runs. It's fouled back. Just what you need after you get popped on the knee is a chance to go from second to first and back a couple of times.
What pitchers like to do is, if they've hit a guy especially in the legs, is throw a few times to first base to make him dive back just to see if that leg's okay.
You pitchers are such kind-hearted folk. That's ball 4, 2 on. Third runner of the inning. There's a double play in there as well. 2 on for Miller.
And he's wanted no part of Evan Longoria. Walked him a couple times, and I got to deal with, beyond a doubt, the best left-hand hitter on this team.
Especially with Kevin Kiermaier not playing. I mean, Miller's going to be your guy anyway. Right. Kiermaier would be in second place.
Kiermaier's a good player, and as good a center fielder defensively. Well, let's say if he's not the best around, he's probably in the top 2 or 3 in baseball.
Still sort of dinged up. They were hoping Kiermaier would be available today. He is not in the lineup. 2 out pitch. Swung through by Miller.
Kiermaier has been nicked up this year. He's only played in 101 games. But he's a stolen base. He is their lone prolific stolen base threat. So for the fans of the Indians, Danny Salazar had a really good bullpen session, and they have not ruled him out of using him in any form in the playoffs, but it's doubtful with time he missed that they can stretch him out enough to start him. But if they have him out of the bullpen, what a weapon he can be. And he was throwing off flat ground when we were there and had a bullpen session today.
That's a high fly ball, twisting foul right-hand side. They could use one more arm, even if it were one of the two. Salazar or Carrasco, you'd think would be okay.
Yeah.
Both is tough.
Well, Carrasco's not coming back because of that broken hand.
Right.
But for Salazar, I mean, this is a guy with an electric fastball, and if he can harness any control from the bullpen, that would be, again, a very big weapon for them. Right now, they're still looking for who's going to be in the number 2 spot behind Corey Kluber as they head to the playoffs, and it looks like they're going to get Boston in the playoffs.
On the ground, third base side, Frazier ends the top of the third. 2 stranded for the Rays. They've left 4, and the Sox still hold a 1-0 lead. From the 100, 300, and 500 levels. Young Sox fans can learn baseball from White Sox Training Academy coaches. Don't miss the batting and pitching cages, base running areas, and be sure to check out the latest Xfinity technology, including the X1 platform. X1 by Xfinity. It'll change the way you experience TV. Drew Smiley to Tim Anderson. Ball 1, a lot of off-speed pitches on first pitches tonight from Smiley.
It's hard to really tell his straight change from his curveball, his slow curveball. And that one right off the mask of Bobby Wilson. So Greg Gibson's going to take a long, slow walk to the mound to see if Bobby Wilson can collect himself. Tough job putting on the gear, and he's just looking down, so Gibson give him some time. How you doing, Bobby? Okay, pal. You're all right. That's good.
Ball and a strike. That looked like a commercial for catcher's gear.
Yeah, how's it holding up? It's okay.
One, 2. Breaking ball low, 2-2.
There is an article that's running on what we see, which is one of the baseball services that we have, likening the Fernandez tragedy to that of Thurman Munson when he was killed in an airplane accident in August of 1979.
You were very much.
We were, the Orioles, the team that I was on, was the first team in to play that first game.
On the ground, a shortstop. Ramirez has to hurry. Anderson can fly, and he is out.
But Tim made it awfully close. Lexi's got a strong arm. That was never a problem for him. And Anderson, he's going to hustle every chance he gets. He thinks he's got a base hit. Just gets beaten, but they want to take a look at it.
That's close.
It's very close. And I don't think they're going to take a look at it because I think they believe it's in the glove before the foot. It's in the glove. The foot's not on the bag. So he got him by a half step.
So one down for Melky, but you were saying?
Yeah, being in New York that game and going through what the Yankees did, I can only imagine what it was like, the feeling in Florida for this game tonight, because after all the eulogies on the scoreboard and everything that went with it, the Yankees took the field with 8 players and no catcher. And the irony is tonight was the game that Jose Fernandez was supposed to start. He was pushed back one day from Sunday to Monday. And quite obviously, a very raw moment.
What was that like
Miami.
to be in that stadium that day?
First of all, it sent chills up your spine. That's number one. Number two, nobody really realized what would happen because they hadn't been through it before.
It's ball 4. Melky walks with 1 down here in the 3rd.
And so, I mean, nobody knew what was going to happen. They put a eulogy up on the board, and then they replaced it with a picture of Thurman. And the fans got up, and there were bed sheets all the way around the ballpark with the number 15. So that was Thurman's number 15, right in the middle of a bed sheet. It was a white sheet with a black circle and a white 15, and they were everywhere. And for 10 minutes, they just kept applauding.
What was the game like?
The game, you know, the irony is I remember when they took the field with 8 players and no catcher. That in itself was one of those things that, again, I don't think anybody who was there could ever forget that. But the game, I don't remember the game in the least. I don't remember what went on. I just, because Thurman was my roommate in college when we would travel on the road, play baseball games. And we had hooked up a couple of times as pros, as opponents. He with the Yankees and I was with the White Sox. And then later with Baltimore, but yeah, it was really something, and I'm sure they're feeling very much the same thing in Miami with the loss of one of their great pitchers, and by all indications, just a really good human being.
Yeah. And you know, just stoically, you look at the numbers that he's put up. I mean, he's a Cy Young candidate in the National League, and you'd imagine still is that there's a chance that posthumously he could get the National League Cy Young this year.
I just had the opportunity a number of different times to just watch his stuff, watch a game that was being shown, and then I would love to watch him pitch from the center field camera. You had a chance, pretty good idea about how the ball moved. It was unbelievable, his stuff.
Check swing, he didn't go. It's 1-2, and on the playful side, I mean, there was a video circulating yesterday of a game between, you were talking about Troy Tulowitzki, a game between the Rockies and the Marlins. When Tulowitzki was playing for the Rockies, he hit this absolute seared line drive back to the mound. Fernandez throws up his glove and stabs it, and Tulowitzki, you can see him mouthing, "Did you catch that?" And Fernandez goes, "Yes, I did," and shook his head at him and laughed. 2-2 on Abreu, who had a chance to talk with Fernandez when the Sox were down there in Miami. They were chatting during batting practice, being countrymen.
And he was pushed back in that start also. He was supposed to face
Sale.
Sox, and and pushed back because of some arm difficulties.
2-2 is up. 3 balls, 2 strikes on Abreu. Cabrera at first. And, you know, all this happens yesterday. And it's just so interesting how baseball can bring you down and uplift at the same time. On the same day, you lose one of the bright young stars of the game. Vince Scully's calling his last game at Dodger Stadium, and the Dodgers win in a walk-off home run in a terribly beautiful moment in the game of baseball. 3-2 is foul.
I got a chance to see the last part of the ball game because I got into the apartment, turned it on, and there was Vin talking about the last part of what, well, turned out to be the finale, the walk-off home run, and then the salute that he gave to the fans and the song that they played that he sung to his wife. It was a wonderful moment.
Wind beneath my wings. Yes. 3-2 from Smiley. Cabrera at first, and down goes Abreu. Strikeout number 4 for Drew Smiley, and 2 out.
Justin Morneau in the first inning hit a rocket of a sacrifice fly, but he wouldn't have been able to drive in a run if Melky didn't double and if Jose didn't single. And there is the line drive rocket. And with that first White Sox run, eClick Lending has donated $100 to the Pat Tillman Foundation, supporting military veterans and their families.
So here is Justin Morneau with the aforementioned sacrifice fly. Gotta have runners on for a sac fly.
True. And I was thinking that we'd start with the strikeout of Anderson, but just the double, the single, and the sacrifice fly.
Steve Stone, a tape room's dream. 0-1. Popped up, foul ground. Bobby Wilson, maskless for out number 3. Melky stranded at first. Sox still leading by a run tonight after 3. Win a prize off our prize shelf. Todd Frazier's home run total entering tonight, minus his career high in homers before this year. Multiply the Sox wins total against the Rays this year and add the final digit of the year in which the Rays played their first major league game. That's your Sox math question for this evening. Hashtag Sox math on Twitter. First correct answer wins a prize off the prize shelf, and James Shields pours in strike 1 to Mikey Matuk. And while Mikey bats, we welcome all our viewers watching on WTC Communications in Wilton, Iowa. Iowa, hello. 2 strikes from Shields, who got Matuk to fly out to right in the first. One and two. Here are the prizes you could win tonight on our prize shelf. Sox Socks. There's a signed baseball by Gene Honda. We have Jose Abreu with his plushy thumbs up. That lovely Sox hat that Steve's been hoarding.
One of my favorites.
James Shields has strikeout number 2 and 1 out in the 4th. Our championship, our Sox Math Championship, is coming up at the end of the season, by the way. We're going to have a second half championship on Sunday.
Yes, but you got such an original prize for the first half champion. What do you think?
That's going to be one of your shoes.
You're gonna buy the second half champion a car? Or better yet, why don't you give him yours?
You've been trying to offload my rent-a-wreck all season long.
Would be nice. They would appreciate it.
1-0. That smash to right center field. A long run for Avi Garcia, and he does get over there to freeze Decker at first. On the old moonwalk to the bag for Jeff Decker, who's got his 5th hit this year.
He thought about 2 bases and then realized that the ball wasn't going all that far. And Avi's got a very good arm. So he reaches out, takes that ball. It was off the plate outside, but he was able to pull it. And Avi got to it quickly.
He closed the gap in right center very well that time, Avi Garcia. Here is Curt Casali, who flied out to center in the 2nd inning. There goes the runner, Decker. That looked like a botched hit and run. And he's safe anyway at second base. You think he was straight stealing there?
Well, I'll tell you in a second. You'll take a look. He's going, and it's not a straight steal, and the reason why, he's looking back. On a straight steal, you're going to have the guy take it. And now he's looking back for contact. He would have been out dead to rights, but the throw was not a good one. It wasn't handled by Sanchez. So it does go to the stolen base. No, that was a hit and run. Otherwise, you're just not looking back.
First major league steal for Decker in his 2nd major league attempt. His first came 3 years ago with the Padres.
This particular Tampa Bay team steals begrudgingly. That's just their 58th, and that was supposed to be a hit and run, turned into a stolen base.
They look like Bonnie and Clyde compared to the Orioles, though.
True.
He went around. That's strike 2 on Casali.
The Orioles, under Buck Showalter, a unique offensive team in that they depend entirely on their offense and hitting the ball out of the ballpark. And they sit and wait, and they've got a number of guys that can do that. They're hitting .256, which is actually a point behind the Sox as a team.
Just inside, close pitch. 17 steals for the Orioles.
And the big difference, 720 runs as opposed to our Sox at 652 coming in. Now 653. Abbott home runs, 245 of them for Baltimore, as opposed to 159 for our Sox. 245 home runs.
Into left field for Casali. Decker is waved around from third. Melky's throw was close. Decker's safe. We're tied. Strong throw from Melky. Narvaez couldn't hang on off the bounce, and it's 1-1.
This throw's got to be one of 2 places. And look, it was a strong throw, and it was seemingly accurate. This throw has to either go all the way on a fly or 1 hop on the grass. This ball short hopped Narvaez. It's not a great throw when you short hop him on the dirt. And it becomes very difficult for the catcher to hold on to, because when the ball hits the dirt especially, it's going to flatten out. And so, again, Melky had 1 or 2 choices. But no way that Omar was going to handle that. That would have been a really difficult ball to handle, and turns into a run batted in and tying the game.
And Casale on the throw to second as the lead run now, as Ramirez takes a strike. 12th career run for Jeff Decker. Casale, a 167 hitter entering tonight with the RBI single and advancing on the throw.
Last year, Casale hit .238 for these Tampa Bays, 10 home runs. So this year, way down in those numbers, and because a whole lot of guys are banged up on this team, his opportunity to be the designated hitter. Dad is explaining why you can't have that 5th hot dog.
But just one more, please. In the dirt, 1-2, which brings up the issue that the White Sox Twitter account had arise a little while ago. We asked for debate topics, right? Because the debate's going on, but we will debate for you so you can watch the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
And get your debate fix. Is the hot dog a sandwich? Is the question that was brought up by the White Sox Twitter account. You be Lincoln, I'll be Douglas.
I would certainly believe that it is. And I
Really?
think unlike you, it is made for some sort of mustard.
So look,
Yeah.
I did not say that I don't like to eat a hot dog with mustard.
Well, do you have the tape? Because I distinctly remember that as you poured ketchup onto that defenseless dog you ate a long time ago.
On the ground, Shields snares it. Casale is free to go to third as it's into center field.
Many times when a pitcher decides to just bloop the ball to any one given base, you're going to lose your accuracy. And so it's fielder's choice E1. This part's good. You get Casale hung out to dry, and then he airmails both Anderson and Sanchez. So as high as Tim Anderson can get up, being a former basketball player, he can't get up that high.
As a former pitcher,
yes,
what leads to a pitcher blooping it like that?
Usually a poor choice. My feeling, when you catch that ball, you know the guy is not getting to first base yet. You catch that ball, you run right at the runner. If he starts heading back, you make a good solid throw to whoever might be at the bag. And if two guys are converging, you make a good solid throw to the bag. But not to be, and so runners at the corners. And with Bobby Wilson up, James is looking for a double play.
Wilson singled to lead off the third. Rays have their only run here in the fourth. There is strike one, threaded through to the strike zone in the low portion, 0-1.
I remember Bobby Wilson as being a terrific bunter. And I remember Mike Scioscia called on him many times to bunt. That particular play would not be out of the equation here.
Well, the question is, does the new manager, does Kevin Cash, know that Wilson is such an adept bunter? He's only spent half the season with Tampa.
Well, he has 7 sacrifices overall, and 3 of them with Tampa Bay. So he can handle the bat, and that's one of the things he does well.
0-1. There is the bunt, and he fouls it away.
That time Wilson dropped ahead of the bat on a low fastball. That's exactly the pitch you want to bunt. That was a safety squeeze.
You see it in his face too. He knew.
Yep, he got the ball in a perfect spot, exactly where he wanted to, and fouled it back, and that was a break.
Casale at third. Alexei Ramirez at first. 2 strikes. Line drive foul over third base coach Charlie Montoyo, and Casale the runner. You wouldn't spring it again on 2 strikes, would you?
No, you're not going to do that. I can take the bat out of his hands. He does have a base hit in his only at bat. That was last inning. Lexi used to love to run.
Shields a quick look over there.
Unfortunately, although he still enjoys running, he doesn't run well any longer. 6 steals, caught 9 times with San Diego.
Fouled off again by Wilson. He stays alive. This could be runner at first, 2 out, had the rundown gone as planned. Instead, first and third, 1 away for the Rays in the 4th. And pitch number 75 forthcoming from James Shields.
A couple of very talented Cubans talking it over at first base with Alexi and Jose.
He got him swinging. Strike 3 outside. 2 down for Forsythe.
Wilson expands that strike zone. This is his cutter. Works very well, and Wilson, in a situation where he had to have some contact, comes up with none.
So here is Forsythe, who has put the ball in play twice, but at somebody twice, including a 5-4-3 double play in the 3rd. Strike 1.
Logan Forsythe has been one of their better players. With 2 outs, runners in scoring position, those numbers are outstanding. 385, 19 driven in on 3 home runs.
He did go 0-2. Boy, that opens up the menu of possibilities for Shields on 2 strikes.
One of the things that opens up is Omar Narvaez having to smother anything down and out of the strike zone, because now is an opportunity to get Forsythe out of the zone.
On 2. Fastball away.
Logan, no stranger to the strikeout. 120 Ks in 120 games coming in.
He wanted to. 2 balls, 2 strikes. Oh for 5 career against Shields for Logan Forsythe. He has Ramirez at first, Casali at 3rd. 2-2. That's strike 3. Shields strikes out the side and keeps it a 1-1 game after 3.5.
card only available at your local Wintrust Community Bank. Go to wintrust.com/Sox to learn more. Wintrust Community Bank, member FDIC. So it appears that you let the game action get in the way of you weaseling out of that hot dog mustard controversy. So you said that you don't mind a
well,
mustard?
the question presented, and we accept the premise of the question presented, it was, is the hot dog a sandwich? You said no. You said yes.
I said yes,
you said yes.
of course.
I don't believe you're right. It's not to have a sandwich. It's got to be vertical bread. That's the requirement for a sandwich. Vertical bread.
Actually, no. Nice thought, but no.
That's a foul ball.
I didn't think there were vertical requirements for a sandwich.
Vertical bread. Yeah.
No.
That you don't have any reasoning?
Well, it's in the sandwich book of rules.
A guy named Earl wrote that. Fly ball right field. Decker won't get there. It's a hit for Frazier. Will it be 2? Yes. Leadoff double Todd Frazier.
Took Todd a while to get into the doubles debate because he had a hard time. He's hitting the ball out of the park all season long, having a hard time with 2 base hits, but this is his 20th. He runs on Decker, and the Sox are going to run on this entire outfield left to right.
Dickerson in left, Montook in center, Decker in right. Now Avi Garcia with Frazier at second. Ball in the dirt, 0-1.
Smiley's straight change looks almost like a screwball in that he throws it straight over the top and tries to get the kind of spin that moves away from the right-hand hitter. So a nice stop by Wilson. And Avi well out in front.
On 1 strike, it's outside. 10-game hit streak now for Todd Frazier. He's hit it 13 out of 14. And since then, his batting average has risen from .215 to .226 starting play tonight. 2-1.
It's interesting. The entire at bat has been stayed away from Avi, and yet what a hitter should be thinking about in a 1-run game is hitting the ball to the right side. You're helping him by staying away. If you cut one inside on his hands or throw him a breaking ball inside, you're pretty much going to force him to pull the ball unless he is very adept at that inside-out stroke.
2-1. Stay away again.
And still misses. With runners in scoring position, Avi's had a good year. Those are robust numbers in situations just like this.
Where's Southpaw going? He's running back down the tunnel behind home there. Southpaw.
No, he's coming out. Yes, he heard you intimating that he's abandoning this particular inning.
Southpaw, a big fan of M&M's, evidently. 3-1 on Avi. Now 3-2. Frazier the leadoff double as Tampa picked up a run in the top of this inning on a Kurt Casale RBI single. Huge gap in left center field. Setup is inside. And Avi goes that way to the pull side. Ramirez pounces and keeps Frazier at second, one away. Here's your Sox math answer for tonight. Frazier 39 homers minus 35, the career high from last year. That makes 4. Sox have beaten the Rays once this year. That's still 4. The final digit in the year in which the Rays played their first game is 8. It was 1998. 12 is the answer. The Sox guy is your winner.
I think the sad part for me is that you had 10 days in which to think up this particular Sox math question.
Okay.
And this was a relatively easy one.
So you're saying that if I have a lot of free time on my hands, it should be the most difficult question. As there goes Frazier. He gets to third, and the ball is at the backstop. Stolen base for Frazier.
Normally it would be either wild pitch or pass ball, but if you don't keep your eye on Todd Frazier, just like at first, he's going to get a running start. And when he does, it's going to be almost impossible to throw him out. This probably would have normally been a pass ball, although Wilson was sitting over the outside corner. Smiley threw it over the inside corner, and that is a team leading 15 steals for Todd Frazier.
Infield drawn in for Tampa Bay. And that ball hit in the air left field by Narvaez. Dickerson awaits. Frazier tags and scores. Second sacrifice fly tonight for the Sox in a 2-1 lead.
8th driven in by Omar. And the stolen base. Enabled a non-official at bat for Omar Narvaez. He hit that ball hard. And no chance to cut down Frazier at the plate.
So the Sox take the lead again, and Carlos Sanchez to bat. By the way, worth mentioning, the opening day starter, in case you may have forgotten, the opening day starter for the Rays in their first game was Wilson Alvarez, former Sox left-hander.
First game ever.
Yeah. Back in 1998. How about this lineup for Tampa Bay? Quentin McCracken, Miguel Cairo.
I remember him.
Wade Boggs.
I don't remember him.
Fred McGriff, Mike Kelly, Paul Sorrento, John Flaherty, Dave Martinez, and Kevin Stocker. Ground ball to first. Miller has out number 3, but the Sox take the lead again. They respond in kind and have a 2-1 advantage after 4. the lead. Top of the 5th inning, Dickerson, Longoria, and Miller coming up. It's a changeup for strike 1 to Dickerson.
Dickerson got hit pretty hard in the knee last time up. It didn't lead to anything, however. Came after a double play.
Dropped into left. That's a base hit. Dickerson has been on twice now. It's a chilly one. What happened to summer? Where's it gone?
We came back yesterday, got off the plane. It was very warm, very nice. And today was a lovely day.
You have to appreciate the people who wear Bears clothes today, even after last night's, let's say, difficult loss.
True. Injuries have befallen that team also.
You make it through an NFL season without significant injuries, you win the prize.
You're not kidding.
Strike 1 to Longoria. Couple of walks tonight. The only 2 walks from James Shields have come to Longoria. Popped it up foul. James Shields, first couple of full seasons with the Rays were very strong. ERAs under 4, 385 and 356, but 2011 was the year that was terribly memorable for him. A 2.82 ERA, 11 complete games.
He was a guy that always wanted to complete what he started. And being one of the real fierce competitors around. I mean, you're looking at a guy who won over 130 major league games. There were many times in his career when he was excellent. We'll take a look at James Shields with the Rays. All-time franchise leader in wins, in starts, in innings, in strikeouts, in complete games, and shutouts. So he left an indelible mark on the Tampa Bay Rays. He was a good one for them for a long time.
Ground ball to third. Frazier starts it. Sanchez turns it, and Abreu picks it. Double play.
Pretty good turn by Carlos Sanchez. Todd starts it. The ball flattened out on him. And they get Longoria by about a step or so, and that is the 12th double play he's grounded into, and the second double play of the night behind James Shields.
First one came in the 3rd off Logan Forsythe's bat. 2 out for Miller. James Shields, that 2011 season, he pitched in Game 2 of the division series against the Rangers. Texas got him for a 5-run 4th inning. Rangers came back to win Game 3 and won the 4th game as well to end the series. Ball and a strike on Miller. Off speed, strike 2.
That was a good straight change. Perfect spot for it. Z. Miller not only over the top of it, but well out in front of it.
Tipped foul. The mix tonight. What do you think of the mix of pitches for James Shields?
I think there's a couple of different things. I think he's thrown it pretty well. What I like is the fact that he's been in a couple of jams and been able to pitch his way out of it. Especially not an easy 3rd inning, although he got the double play ground ball to Forsythe, and then still got in some trouble before getting Miller to ground out softly to the left side.
Curveball low at 69 miles an hour. Average 77 for the year for Shields on that curveball.
So 38% of the time he throws a fastball, 24% of the time a changeup. The cutter at 21%, and the curveball at 16%. That's just this evening, not a yearly running total on his mix of pitches.
He gets Miller swinging for strikeout number 5. James Shields threw 4.5 with a 2-1 lead. It's a 2-1 lead for the Sox on a couple of sacrifice flies tonight. One in the first, one in the fourth from Morneau and Narvaez as Leury Garcia watches strike one.
Actually, Leury came in with his batting average in the 220s, but he's hit the ball better than that. He's actually, from both sides of the plate, swung the bat well.
Like that, right up the origin, base hit. He's 1 for 2.
And if you've ever had one back at the origin, you would know that high changeups don't do well. Rifling it by Smiley into center field. You know, Leury can do a whole lot of things, and he's got to convince powers that be in his ball club that he will be a valuable man to have around. There's going to be a lot of competition for a guy you would term as a swing man, and the advantage that Leury has is that he can not only play the outfield, but he can play center field and play it well as all the infield positions.
And he can run.
There's no doubt. He can run and he can throw. So, again, there's going to be a lot of competition for that particular spot.
21 of 25 career stolen bases for Leury Garcia as Tim takes ball 1. 11 of those steals came 2 years ago for the Sox in his 74 games, the most he's played in any year in the majors. He went around, ball and a strike on Anderson. Well, this is one guy that, you know, I mean, barring some health concern, is going to break camp with the Sox and be in that same position, at least with the team growing year to year. Tim Anderson.
Well, he made great strides from what we saw early in the season, from what we saw in spring training. and actually great strides defensively from what we saw when he first got called to the major leagues. He had a number of rough edges, still has a few, but not near as many. And because of some changed footwork, he actually has shown an above average arm. So it's been, you know, for the first shot at the major leagues for Tim Anderson, regardless of what the numbers say when he's done, it's been a very successful year for him.
Fouled off 2-2 on Anderson, who struck out and grounded out against Smiley so far tonight. Chris Sale pitching tomorrow here at U.S. Cellular Field. That's a 7:10 first pitch. He'll face Alex Cobb. Then Blake Snell and Miguel Gonzalez on Wednesday. And then finally Chris Archer, Jose Quintana in the finale against the Rays before the Twins come to town for 3 to close out the season. 2-2. Launched again, foul.
Sox will be trying to tack on loss number 20. Chris Archer. He is 8-19. If you take into consideration everything, and Cobb has had one of those years where he's been hurt, only 4 starts. He's got a chance to be their number 1.
Ball low, 3-2 for Anderson. Well, you wonder where the Rays will go after this season. You mentioned there are a couple young guys on the roster, but there are some veterans as well in this lineup. Ramirez, 35. And Longoria now getting into his early 30s. This would be the time if you're going to build around him. You've got to do it soon.
Well, this is pretty much it. Putting a team together, but for Tampa, it's been difficult.
Garcia's off, and therefore the Sox stay on the double play. It's 5-3 on the ground ball. Join us for Rock and Roll Night and fireworks presented by Guaranteed Rate on Saturday, October 1st as the White Sox host the Twins at 6:10 p.m. First 5,000 fans to enter U.S. Cellular Field receive a Rock and Roll Night cap, compliments of Guaranteed Rate. For tickets, visit whitesox.com. Here's Melky, who takes ball number 1. It's a nice cap. We need to get you one of those.
That's a good-looking cap.
And good-looking cotton candy.
And cotton candy.
What would you say cotton candy tastes like for those who've never had it?
Well, you can do this if you've never had cotton candy. You can take a lot of sugar and put it on some steel wool. That would give you some semblance of what it would be like. Or just take some sugar and pour it into your mouth, because it is all sugar.
You know, I have to say, after about 75 games this year,
yes,
I have a really strong feeling of what questions I ask you that you're going to have a very good answer to.
Well, there you go.
And that was one of them.
Look, take a look. Young man sharing his cotton candy. Turns your mouth blue.
Yeah, you don't want to go on a job interview after eating cotton candy. On the ground, Leuri runs and gets to third. Cabrera bounces out, 2 away, and Abreu coming up.
That was kind of a dangerous run to third, because I think Alexi Ramirez might have had him had he chosen to go there, but you don't run when the ball is in front of you. I mean, that's just kind of standard stuff. That's one of the things that I do believe that they're going to have to impress upon the base runners for next year who happen to wear White Sox uniforms. If the ball is in front of you, which is an easy thing to figure out if you're taking a lead at second base, don't run to third.
You're saying the rules are not plenty there. It's just one rule.
No, and it's really not open to interpretation. It's just don't run to third. That's like You're leading off at first. The guy hits a line drive to the second baseman. You're looking right to second baseman, and he catches it. Don't break the second.
So you're saying if I'm at second base, right?
You're at second base.
And the ball is in front of me. On the ground.
Yes.
I should run to third?
No, actually, in your case, if the ball is anywhere on the field, you don't run to third. If it's hit out of the ballpark, that's when you start your trot to the plate.
It's a ball and 2 strikes on Abreu.
Yeah, because there's no good spot for you to go to third.
Uh-huh. In the sacrifice bunt, I am the sacrifice.
You're definitely a sacrifice.
Smiley to Abreu, and a tie, 2-2.
Outfield very deep around toward right center field.
Abreu held up. It's 3-2 as Wilson keeps it in front. Garcia at third, 2 away.
We'll take a look from the side, and no, there was no chance that he went around. Good call. And turned out to be a good stop by Bobby Wilson.
Three balls, 2 strikes. Smiley to Abreu. And a line drive at first off the glove of Miller. Forsythe can't handle it. The Sox are back on the board. That ball was hit on the screws, and Miller could not reel it in. It's 3-1.
It is single RBI. And that gives him 98. 2 to go. If Forsythe comes up with it, it's going to be a very interesting play at first. It's going to be close. Liuri. He scores easily as that ball deflects away. 2 more. 2 more to go for Jose Abreu in his pursuit of the century mark.
This ball grounded through off the shift. Morneau singles. Abreu scampers for third. Smiley has no grin on his face at this point.
Playing him as a dead pull hitter, and Justin goes back up the middle. Jose easily moving to third base. That brings Hickey out to have a word with Smiley.
So Jim Hickey having a conversation with Smiley. 9 seasons entering this one as the pitching coach for the Rays.
He's seen something that you very rarely, if ever, see, and that is a complete tear down and rebuild of a bullpen. A completely different bullpen Jim Hickey had to work with. Probably, I would say, 3 or 4 years ago.
Dad Jim, a former boxer who once fought Joe Louis in an exhibition in Tokyo.
How'd he do? You have the round by round?
Don't have the card there. But the older Jim was in the Navy. He was one of the servicemen selected to fight Joe Louis.
Usually not a great thing, unless Joe at the time was 65.
We now turn our attention to Frazier after Louis. 2-0 on Todd. Abreu at third, Morneau at first. A run in. Boy, there are just two large gaps on the infield right now, with Miller holding Morneau on at first. There's a gargantuan space between him and Forsythe, and then between Forsythe and Ramirez, who's palling around with Longoria at third.
Yeah, that's an extreme pull shift in the infield. Longoria and Ramirez really close to one another.
Popped it up foul.
But that's what the defensive charts say. And if there's one team that goes with a sabermetric view of the game of baseball, it is the Tampa Bay Rays.
First and third, 2 out, 2-2 on Frazier. Smiley got him up high with a fastball. Strikeout number 5 for the Sox. Run number 3 for the Sox and a 2-run lead. Tampa Bay Rays, Thursday, September 29th, 7:10 p.m. First 10,000 fans to enter U.S. Cellular Field receive a White Sox Performance T-shirt. For tickets, visit whitesox.com/Thursdays. We got our hands on one of these today. That's a nice shirt.
That's a wonderful shirt.
That crinkling you hear is Steve pulling his out of the packaging. Line drive to left is off the wall, and it's a single for Mikey Matuk as Melky played it perfectly.
That one almost left the ballpark, but it stayed in, and then Melky got it back in a hurry. That was an inside cutter. Matuk got most of it, not enough to get it out. And Melky did not get trapped too close to the wall, which is what happens sometimes, and have that ball go by him. So that's a very, very long single.
Here's Decker, who singled, stole a base, and scored earlier. Close play. And in fact, the first base umpire, Mike Estabrook, was still moving as the ball came. Decker, who was named after his uncle, who was born on a military base, as the story goes, and when his uncle was born, there was a transposition on his birth certificate, the uncle's birth certificate. So J-E-F-F, Jeff, became J-A-F-F, Jeff.
Well, I thought it was Decker that they made a mistake on.
Be Dagger. Looping liner over third into left. Mikey Matuk slams on the brakes and 2 on. Nobody out in the Rays' 6th inning against their former compatriot Shields.
That's 2 hits for Decker. That looked like a cutter that didn't do a great deal, and he didn't hit it hard, but couldn't have dumped it in a better spot.
So Robin and Coop think it over. Omar Narvaez goes out to the mound. And Kurt Casale, the batter. You're down 2. You have nobody out.
And the bullpen up and going. It's Juan Minaya throwing in the pen. He's been fairly impressive.
Last saw Minaya in game 1 of that Cleveland series, the only win for the Indians in that series. Cleveland, by the way, leading 6-4 in the 8th over the Tigers, trying to clinch the division as Shields misses with ball 1.
A nice time for little ground ball in the infield as Casale does not run very well.
It's in the air, but Shields will take it. Anderson on the move for out number 1. How about the pop-up, then the double play?
Could very well be.
By the way, the Astros and Mariners are playing in the 7th inning. It's 2-1 Seattle, essentially a knockout series for anybody to be involved in the wild card race out of those 2 teams. You would imagine somebody would have to sweep or come close to it, with those 2 trailing the Tigers and the Orioles and the Jays.
I just have the strongest feeling that both wild card teams are coming out of the East.
Orioles picked the right time to win 3 in a row, that's for sure.
And if they do get the lead late, it's usually it. And there you look at the wild card. The Orioles, 1.5 games up, but only 1 game in the loss column.
Orioles are idle tonight. One 1-0 on Ramirez. Matuk at second, Decker at first.
Blue Jays were up in that game over the Yankees, but they head into the bottom of the 9th inning north of the border, trailing 7-3.
Yankees put together quite the effort to hang around as long as they did, now trying to stand in the way of their division mates. That's a strike at the low portion of the zone, 2-1.
Joe Girardi walked out of a press conference when they started asking about a particular pitcher that he used in a situation in a game that Yankees eventually lost anyway. I think it's a remarkable job by Joe Girardi to keep that team afloat with what they gave away and what they still have.
That game tonight, by the way, the Yankees were down 3-1 entering the 8th. They scored 1 in the 8th to make it 3-2, then 5 in the 9th, 4 against Jason Grilli to take that 7-3 lead.
Yeah, I think all the Yankees can do is act as a spoiler in the wild card. They're too far back to make a whole lot of things happen, but they can have a say-so in who does get there.
3-1 on the ground and foul.
That one pretty close down the line as Ed Hickok says it was foul. We'll watch it again.
Again, that play not reviewable because the foul call was in front of the placement of the umpire.
I'm kind of glad it's not reviewable. That looked like it might have had the bag. I know it hit well foul, but it was a lot closer than it appeared.
Pop up. Runners have to go back. Gravity takes hold, and Frazier's there in foul ground for round number 2.
Good thing that one was popped up, because there is no way in the world you cut down the lead runner, Matuk. Maybe you have a shot at Decker.
Don Cooper, white courtesy phone. Don Cooper, white courtesy phone.
He wants to know if Manaea is ready.
How often do you see both ends of a phone call playing out on live television? Coop picked it up. It went right to Thigpen. And somewhere the baby bells are smiling. In history, one ringy ding.
I think you see that relatively often.
You do?
Oh, yeah.
Both ends of the phone call just as they're happening.
Sure.
Real time phone pickup.
Absolutely.
Only here on CSN Plus.
You got Wilson on a big out in the 4th inning. Runners at the corners, he struck him out.
A 1. 0-2. Yeah, that bunt that went awry for Wilson seemed like it fouled up his at bat.
Yeah, so we've got both bullpens up and going.
Two strikes in the dirt, and Narvaez skids over to get his body on it. Nice play. 1-2.
Pretty nice job as he moves to his right, knowing the ball's going to come back to his left. He's able to make sure that there's no advancement.
Ball and 2 strikes. Pitch number 107. Will have to lead to 108. And a near catch on the tarp. Frustration sets in for that Sox fan who nearly had it.
And look, she has offered the baseball anyway.
Thank you, she says.
Certainly appreciates that.
Left her hanging on the high five, though.
But she's got a souvenir.
Shields to Wilson, 1-2, 2 on, 2 out. And he goes after it in the dirt. Strike 3. That's the inning. 2 left on by the Rays. Shields has stranded 8. 3-1 Sox. Played the Rays, so we have Ray Fosse How'd you do against Ray Fosse?
Jeez. Well, he was so much older than I was. I think I pitched him when I was 12. He's a right-hand hitter. I think I did okay. What, I faced him once? Twice?
Yeah, something like that.
Can't be too many times, I don't think.
We have a number of famous Rays for you this series.
Oh, you do?
Uh-huh.
Oh, good. Ray Milan, I got him out easily.
Ray Bradbury, how'd you do against him?
Very well. And we've got a new pitcher coming into the game. It is Ryan Garton. On for the 35th time. He's 1-2 his ERA. 4.75. Left-handers have hit him pretty hard overall. Opponent's hitting 281, which is a high number. So Smiley goes 5, gives up 3 runs on 7 hits with a walk and 5 strikeouts. He will leave trailing.
So Garton in his 35th career Major League appearance. This is rookie season. His Twitter handle, by the way, he evidently is a Three Musketeers fan. His Twitter handle is Gartanian12. Gartanian12.
I like that.
Ball with a strike on Avi. 34th round pick back in 2012, Ryan Garton. Odds are stacked against you in the 34th round.
It is that, but with low expectations, sometimes you find a guy that exceeds all expectations. Mark Burley, one of those guys. He was drafted way back there.
Breaking ball cued to second. Logan Forsythe throws out Garcia. 1 away. Fan appreciation flash sale. Purchase a Sox pack to benefit White Sox charities. Each Sox pack includes a White Sox OGO backpack filled with autographed memorabilia, game tickets, and a custom U.S. Cellular Field replica. Premium Sox packs even include an autographed jersey. Discounted pricing this weekend only. To purchase your Sox pack, visit whitesox.com/soxpacks. You can do that right now. As Omar Narvaez skewers a ball to center field for a 1-out single.
Single to go with his sacrifice fly.
He's on for Sanchez, whose base hit in the second was the Sox' 3rd hit of the day. 8 now on the board. Strike call to Carlos Sanchez. The power surge has started for Sanchez as Tommy Kahnle gets loose. Ball and a strike from Garton to Sanchez. 6 innings for James Shields. He would leave the pitcher in line for the win if he left the game, which you'd imagine with the pitch count running up toward 110, he may.
I would think so. Giving him a job well done.
1-2 on Sanchez. Game 1 of the series, 4-game series, then 3 with the Twins to close out the season. Sox would have to win out this week to finish at 500.
Stranger things have happened.
A lot of them this season.
Not many, but stranger things have happened.
2-2 from Garton. The Indians are trying to put away the division. They have the bases loaded in the top of the 8th with 2 out against the Tigers. Magic number at 1 for Cleveland. Narvaez at first, 2-2. It's outside. Wilson tried to bring it back, 3-2. Narvaez runs, it's foul.
Wilson was getting ready to throw, but that ball fouled off, and he'll get another one.
Sox with a run in the first, a run in the fourth, a run in the fifth. Narvaez holds this time, and it's strike 3. Let's see how you did against Ray Fosse.
Ray Fosse.
3 for 13.
Yeah.
4 strikeouts. Well done by you.
No extra base hits. No walks.
How'd you do against Bob Fosse?
You know, he had interesting footwork. You remember he couldn't swing it all that well. Yeah, pretty good. So Ray, I'll have to send Ray a note of congratulations while he has his duties with the Oaklands. Longtime broadcaster. He was an all-star catcher when he was with the Cleveland Indians.
Nice man.
Very nice man.
Oh, 1 on Garcia. That's in for a strike from Ryan Garten. 0-2.
.66 degrees at game time, I believe. Maybe a little chillier than that now.
It's one of those fragile temperature days. If you lose 10 degrees off where it is right now, it starts to feel very early winter-like.
We're going to be fine, and then maybe the 3rd game of the series, a little rain perhaps.
1-2. Chop to first. Miller the leap for out number 3. Narvaez left on. We've played 6 tonight. It's 3-1 Sox in the series opener.
light, and here's our Miller moments, and it came with James Shields in a jam. 2 on, nobody out. Those are the 2 on. And now there's nobody out until Sully pops it up, followed by Ramirez, who pops it up, followed by Wilson, who strikes out to get out of the jam. Our Miller moments, and the last pitch that James Shields threw. Tommy Kahnle comes in the ball game for the 27th time. 0-1. His ERA shrinking. It's at 2.92. He has started to get the ball over the plate. Never anything wrong with the stuff. That's always been good. And hopefully he has found whatever it is that eluded him.
He'll face the top of the order for the Rays. Forsythe, Dickerson, and Longoria. Right-hander out of Latham, New York, Tommy Kahnle. Major League appearance number 117. His first 90 came with Colorado. Forsythe takes low. Told you about the Indians trying to clinch the division. The Dodgers did so yesterday. Cubs are aiming for win number 100 and doing it in a big way at Pittsburgh tonight, 12-2.
Yeah, I would think they'd be in pretty good shape behind Kyle Hendricks, who's had a magnificent year.
Did you see the news on Corey Kluber tonight?
I did not.
He exited the start this evening against the Tigers with right groin tightness.
Well, for the Tribe, if there is something wrong with him and he can't go, you can pretty much phone it in. They hook up with the Red Sox in the first round.
There's not a whole lot of time to get him right either, even if it's something small.
It could very well be he just felt something and then they decided that they need to take him out and attend to it.
4 innings tonight for Kluber. There is ball 4. Forsythe, the leadoff walk in the 7th. Dickerson, the batter, against Kahnle. I don't know you want to face the Red Sox at all, but without Kluber, Salazar, and Carrasco, Terry Francona is going to have to marshal his bullpen like he never has before, and he knows how to marshal a bullpen.
You know, we saw up close and personal what bullpen night is like with 8 pitchers in 9 innings. Usually not a pretty sight.
It's ball 1 from Kahnle to Dickerson, and the control is battling Kahnle.
I think you would probably see if Corey Kluber can walk to the mound, he'll go out there pitching the first game of the playoffs. And Omar Narvaez goes out to have a word with Tommy. Bullpen up and going for the Sox. It's only a 2-run game, and Robin probably is not going to let things get away if Tommy can't get the ball over the plate.
Ball, no strikes on Dickerson. By the way, Deoner Navarro has just driven in a run for the Blue Jays to trail now by 2 to the Yankees as Anthony Renato and Dan Jennings loosen up.
Don Cooper's taking that long, slow walk to the mound, giving both his pensmen a chance to get loose.
So 7 pitches, 6 out of the zone for Kahnle so far. And Dickerson who came in slugging nearly 500 with his 23 homers, 36 doubles. He's a very dangerous hitter. Forsythe at first. 2-0. 2-1.
See, that's a good pitching coach. You go out there and you say, look, I know you've fallen behind, but why don't you throw a strike? And he'll throw it by him. And then he does.
Pitching coaches never like that first pitch after they go back into the dugout. Because if it's down the middle and it gets whacked, it looks like it's their fault. 2-1. Fouled off. 2-2 on Dickerson.
Dickerson helped him out. That was borderline, perhaps up and away, but he swung at it anyway.
Don Cooper, longtime Sox pitching coach. Forsythe at first, nobody out. Went after a bad one again, still 2-2.
In protection mode, but he certainly has expanded that zone. And you've got Longoria and Miller coming up after Dickerson. This one is way off the plate.
Dickerson steadying himself, trying to stay alive. 2-2. Low. 3-2 from Canely. Yankees have just finished off the Blue Jays tonight 7-5, though Toronto scored 2 in the ninth. That means the Jays are a game up on Baltimore for the top wild card spot. Baltimore off tonight. The Indians have tacked one on, leading 7-4 in Detroit after 7.5. Forsythe at first, 3-2 on Dickerson. That's ball 4. Back-to-back walks. Longoria coming up.
And Robin wants to know if both guys are ready. So there's the phone call. And the other end, Bobby Thigpen says yes, they are.
No movement from the fifth-year skipper of the White Sox. Canely will face Longoria. Two walks tonight for Longoria, and he takes ball 1.
It actually was a very good slider, but Longoria not wanting to hit a slider on the first pitch. If Canely was ahead, he'd probably swing at that. But on the first pitch, he takes it for a ball.
That was a slider that stayed up. Ball and a strike.
Yeah, Tommy got pretty lucky on that last one. That is a hanging slider.
Two sliders to make the count 1-1. Canely on the ground. Frazier at third. Starts it and gets 2. The jump throw from Sanchez turns it.
That's the second at bat in a row. Longoria's grounded into a 5-4-3. He gets it there in time, and so Robin coming out. He doesn't want him to face Miller. But he did get the double play ground ball, so Dan Jennings will come in, and as he strolls in, we'll stroll out. Be back after these messages.
StubHub app. We take the price and location of seats and show you which tickets at StubHub give you the best deal. So get the StubHub app today. StubHub, the official fan-to-fan ticket marketplace of the Chicago White Sox.
Time now for the Midas Tire and Auto Service Experts call to the pen. And it is Dan Jennings, who's been a very busy man these days, on for the 63rd time. 4-3 is ERA 2.11. And he's got Forsythe at third, 2 outs. Brad Miller coming up, one of their most prolific home run hitters.
Robin plays into the splits here. Better against right-handers Miller by far. And there is ball number 1. Miller, last time struck out, grounded out to third, and that double to center in the first inning. On 1-0. You got Matuk next, who has been significantly better against left-handers, as Narvaez goes out to talk to Jennings.
Well, one of the things that you might be talking to him about is you got a hitter having to look for a fastball here. He's brought in to get the lefty. It's a 2-0 count. He's looking one pitch, depending on what he likes, whether he likes middle in or middle away. Whatever it is, he's looking fastball, and probably, unless it's really a hanger, probably not going to swing at it. And I think Don Cooper coming out to talk with him about just that situation. Got a home run hitter looking for a fastball on 2-0.
By the way, Cleveland has won 7-4, the final score for the Indians over the Tigers. So the Indians are winners of the American League Central by the count of 7-4 with a 2-run eighth to finish the deal.
Andrew Miller getting the win, running his record to 10-1. His ERA to 1.50. Miller has been a great addition to that bullpen. And now they have a really strong back end with Shaw, Miller, and Allen. Not necessarily in that order, because he's shown he'll use Andrew Miller anywhere.
Highest leverage spot, basically, is where Miller will go.
Sometimes he thinks that save is there in the 7th inning. He'll use him in the 7th.
Two balls, no strikes on Miller from Jennings. That's a strike at 91 that flashed in there, 2-1.
Probably a little higher than Miller would have liked. That's why he didn't let it go, even though he got the fastball.
Forsythe at third, 2-1. Tapper to the mound. Jennings for out number 3. Didn't think he'd ever toss it. He finally did. Stretch time.
advantage. Last two homestands for the Sox, it has been a huge advantage. The record 12-7, the batting average of 281 runs per game, 4.7 average with runners in scoring position, which is how you get to 12-7 at 331. You see the rest of it. Sox love to be home, especially the last two homestands. And they've got one left, and we've got a new pitcher coming in the game, and it is Kevin Jepsen. There you look at the numbers on for the 58th time. He was a closer at one point. Successful 7 of 11 times, 2.6 ERA, very high at 5.88.
Right-hander Jepsen out of Bishop Manogue High School in Reno. Former second-round pick. Took 6 years to make his debut. And he will first face Tim Anderson in the home 7th for strike one. Sox got a run in the first on a Justin Morneau sacrifice fly, then one more in the 4th on an Omar Narvaez sacrifice fly after Todd Frazier doubled and stole 3rd. Then Jose Abreu, a searing line drive to first, got a run home in the 5th. It kicked off Brad Miller's glove and scored Leury Garcia.
Jepsen originally with the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim.
He was in the same draft class as Joey Votto. Votto picked 44th overall, Jepsen 53rd, John Lester 57th, Jesse Crane 61st. 2-1. No sir, 3 balls and a strike. Jepsen home. Anderson skyward. Longoria the call for out number 1. Tim 0 for 4 so far tonight. So here's Melky, who doubled and scored in the first, doubled and scored in the first, walked in the 3rd, then grounded out in the 5th. Sox trying to take game 1 of this series and pick up win number 75 of this 2016 season, which has not a lot of sand left in its hourglass. Melky deep to right field. Decker at the warning track.
Wrong time of the year to hit that. That was hit awfully hard, but it's not all that lively at the park tonight because of the temperatures, and Melky gets most of it, just not quite enough of it. Hitting for home run number 14, but Decker back with about 2 steps to spare makes the catch.
That's a surefire home run in July.
Long gone. Yep, but not now.
2 down for Abreu. A slider for strike 1. Jose at 299. 98 driven in. 30 home runs would be hard to come by to become that second guy ever with 30 homers and 100 RBIs in his first 3 seasons.
It's going to be an uphill battle with 5 left. Jepsen was a closer with the Twins. Glenn Perkins went down early. The Twins decided that they were going to give an opportunity to Jepsen, who throws hard enough, but just didn't work out. So they designated him for assignment, eventually releasing him. This is his second go around with the Rays. And at one point he was a very good setup man with the Angels.
1-2 from Jepsen to Abreu. clobbered foul. Rays last were over 500 back on May the 20th. They were 21-20 at that point. From there, things went south to 65-90 for Kevin Cash. Kevin Forrest Cash, the new manager of the Tampa Bay Rays, as Kevin Jepsen does some shoe maintenance on the mound.
Tampa Bay has a couple of good building blocks. Kevin Kiermaier, an excellent center fielder. He's one of those guys. Longoria at third. They certainly like Miller at first.
Two balls, two strikes on Abreu. Souza as well, who's not in the lineup. He's injured.
Yep. But he'll be back after that surgery. And
check swing on a slider. He held up. Abreu stays alive. It's 3-2.
take a look, and Mike Esterbeck says no, he didn't. Rays believe that Matt Duffy is going to be their shortstop next year, to go with Forsythe at second.
That's ball four. Abreu is on for the third time tonight. There enough Matt Duffys in Major League Baseball?
Yeah, I think so. Just
Astros
enough.
had one. Giants had one. And Giants Matt Duffy over to Tampa. And out goes Jepsen. Rays call to the bullpen one more time. Runner on, 2 out. Bottom 7, come back with us. 3-1 Sox. No, I got something to do first. Sox Fest 2017 returns January 27th through the 29th, bringing ballpark fun to the Hilton Chicago. You'll score an autograph or photo with current players, coaches, and White Sox greats. Your favorite areas are back with an interactive space to play games, win prizes, shop for team gear, a weekend of White Sox baseball that you won't want to miss. Hotel packages available now, whitesox.com/SoxFest for tickets and more information. Yes, Mr. Stone.
Well, it would normally be time for the Midas Tire and Auto Service Experts call to the pen.
And that's a long fly ball from Morneau to right field and gone. Eddie Romero greeted with thunder from Morneau.
Home run number 6, his 3rd run driven in tonight, giving him 25 of them. That one's going to make it a whole lot more comfortable, as that Rays fan has a souvenir. A towering fly ball, Ford home run replay, and this one into the bullpen. One charge to Jepson, one charge to Romero.
Another generous donation with that home run from the Alex Nellius family in loving memory of Ursula. And any Romero that's come into this game has given up a home run. One for Frazier would mean 40 for the game as Justin Morneau enjoys a smile with Alex Avila. 2-1.
That is the 6th home run Romero's given up.
Three and one on Frazier, who doubled, stole a base, and scored back in the 4th. Three balls and a strike from Romero, and Frazier got jammed. Longoria ends the 7th inning. Justin Morneau, a 2-run home run, and the Sox expand their lead. It's 5-1 after 7.
Penguins starting at 7:30 on CSN Plus. And with a fairly comfortable lead, Nate Jones comes into the ball game. Nate on for the 70th time. Been a wonderful year for him. ERA 2.36. There you look at the numbers. 80 strikeouts, 68 and 2/3 innings.
You know, with the departure of Zach Duke, Nate Jones has really held that bullpen together. He's a guy that Robin Ventura and Don Cooper have been able to rely on a game-to-game basis for normally what he provides in terms of stability, but he's greeted this time by Mikey Matuk with a leadoff double in the 8th.
Got a first ball fastball on the inner portion and drilled it down the line. Thought Frazier had no chance playing off the line. So Omar goes out there to tell him what set of signs they want to use with a runner at second base.
Decker, the batter, he's had a very nice night. The 26-year-old journeyman, couple of franchises through his career. This is 100th major league at bat. Matuk at second. 5-1 Sox in the 8th. That's a ball low. Chris Sale pitching tomorrow, 7:10 first pitch. We will be once again on CSN Plus. Sale will stand against Alex Cobb. Ball smashed to center field and down, a base hit. Matuk to third. Decker to first. He's 3 out of 4. And runners at the corners, nobody out for Casale.
Decker, who came in hitting 108, had a big night.
He was 4 for 37 this year. He's 3 out of 4 tonight. And he has his first career 3-hit game. In fact, just his second multi-hit game in his major league lifetime. Casale swings through a hot fastball, 0-1. Sox would trade 2 outs for the run if given the opportunity. Slider makes it 0-2.
Another slider. There's not going to be an opportunity for a ground ball. Nate Slider to a right-hand hitter, close to unhittable. And there will be another slider.
That had the zone. Ground ball to first, and the throw to the plate gets an out. Matuk thrown out at home.
Probably not the best base running play, 4 runs down. Especially after he stopped. He stopped at one point and then tried to pick it up again.
Get him.
They're going to take a look at it.
I don't know. He got him. Yeah, he'll take it.
Looked like it caught the gloves.
Gloves are off. Or out at least. No replay called for, and strike 1 to Ramirez. If I'm Kevin Cash and it's the 8th inning, I'm going to ask him to look at it.
Absolutely.
Right?
At this point, you got nothing to lose.
Oh, 1. Hangs up and in. There's one more look.
Yeah,
oh, yeah,
he's tagged. He's tagged.
Yeah, scratch that. I wouldn't
by plenty
review that at all. The reverse angle does the trick.
The reverse angle.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Reverse of what we had initially. On the ground, could be 2, and is 6-4-3. That was easy. inning. Sox were in danger at the top of the inning and got out of it very niftily.
Yet another double play.
Indeed. A third on the night.
James Shields, who started through the first two.
4, I should say. I shortchanged the Sox at double play. 4 double plays.
Forsythe, Longoria for 2, and then Alexi.
You know what the Sox need in this last homestand, Steve Stone?
A double play counter?
One more triple play.
That would be really nice.
What do you think?
Sure. Except you don't want to be in that much trouble to get into a position to turn a triple play.
On the ground, Romero has to scramble, loads up a bullet, and look out, Brad Miller. Oh, my goodness.
Well, occasionally pitchers decide that the only way they can make a play is using their bare hand, and then he throws a 1,000-mile-an-hour throw to first base. So, whoa, yes, indeed.
You know you're in for it when you're the first baseman, and he lifts up that leg. That's a nice play by Miller.
It's a nice play by everybody concerned, including Avi, who hustled down the line.
And I actually think that's probably well put. Everybody was concerned.
Everybody was concerned with Romero, and he bare hand and then fired.
Ball and a strike on Narvaez. Two and one to Omar, who's 1 for 2 with a sacrifice fly. Sox trying to even the series this year with the Rays at 2 apiece. Rolled to first, and much softer than the ball that came Miller's way just a moment ago. Two and 2. Off the glove of Wilson. Narvaez remains in a 2-2 count.
Terrific pitchers duel tomorrow night. Alex Cobb and Chris Sale. Chris will be looking for win number 17.
Two and 2. It's just off the plate. 3 and 2, and here's your pitching matchup.
Those numbers by Cobb deceiving. He's had some injuries this year, but he's a good pitcher.
Omar went after ball 4, still 3 and 2. We should, by the way, tip our cap. You see Chris Sale taking it in to Joey DeMichael, Sox Double-A player who's won a 2nd straight minor league Gold Glove award, announced today. The only repeat winner in minor league baseball of a minor league Gold Glove. Target practice to center field tonight for Narvaez. He's 2 for 3. And all of us at Comcast Sportsnet would like to send our support to our friends and viewers in many parts of Iowa who've been affected by the massive flooding, which has led to thousands of home and business evacuations over the past several days. We want you to know we are by your side and thinking of you. So many of our affiliates in Iowa we've said hello to this year. If you'd like to support people affected by disasters like the flooding in north and eastern Iowa, we ask that you go to redcross.org, call 1-800-RED-CROSS, or text Red Cross to 90999. Long ball left field and gone. Carlos Sanchez's power surge continues.
Just a 3rd home run. He now has driven in 19. And it's the 2nd 2-run homer in as many innings. Our fourth home run replay. So Romero has not had a particularly good outing. He's given up 2 two-run blasts.
So Carlos Sanchez with that 8th career home run. As there's a fly ball to right from Leury Garcia for round number 2. So Carlos now with 3 homers this month. 3 homers in 8 days while we're at it.
Been pretty impressive.
Ball 1 to Anderson. Carlos Sanchez now has 2 of his 8 career home runs against the Rays. First one came August 3rd last year off of Steve Geltz. E-N-N-Y, Enny Romero. Anderson a drive, center field. This will stay in. Mikey Matuk calls it in for out number 3. 2-run shot, Carlos Sanchez. It's 7-1 Sox. To the 9th we go.
And James Shields has had quite a night. Threw the ball very well. 6 innings, 1 run, 7 hits, a couple of walks, 6 strikeouts. If this holds up, and you expected it would, James will win for the first time in just about 2 months. There you look at the numbers. He's very impressive in his 108 pitches. And now Juan Minaya comes in to try to nail it down with a 6-run lead. For the 9th time, ERA 1.04.
We welcome those of you watching our game after taking in the Cubs victory earlier. Thanks for stopping on by. The Sox are up 7-1 here in the 9th inning. Couple of home runs the last few times at bat for the Sox. Still 0-2 on Bobby Wilson. Tampa Bay got its lone run in the 4th inning. Briefly, this game was tied at 1, but the Sox countered with a run in the home 4th. An Omar Narvaez sacrifice fly gave the Sox the lead for good. Little did we know at the time. 2 strikes from Minaya. Sox trying to get to 9 over at home this year. Be a 42-33 home record with a win tonight. 3 outs away as there is ball 2. Tommy Kahnle went 2/3 of an inning. Dan Jennings got 1 out. Then Nate Jones won scoreless 8th. 2-2 on Wilson from Minaya. In the air, right side. Carlos Sanchez squeezes out number 1.
You're probably asking yourself, what does the upcoming schedule look like?
Steve, what's the upcoming schedule look like?
Well, our PNC Bank, our friendly PNC bankers are going to tell us. It's 3 more here with the Tampa Bay Rays. And then Brian Dozier and the Minnesota Twins come to town for the Swan Song.
One of the home run leaders in Major League Baseball out of nowhere, Brian Dozier.
That's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Yeah. We'll be here. You'll be here. Let's make a thing of it.
I'll be here.
Fly ball from Forsythe. Back to right field, Avi. Yes, sir. 2 down.
Long run as that ball slicing away from him, but he was able to make the catch. Forsythe hits it well, not quite well enough on a cool night at the ballpark, and Avi makes the catch.
And makes friends with the fence. 2 down for Dickerson. This would be the first Rays inning without a base runner since the 2nd. And they've only got 1 run to show for it. It's outside, ball 1 to Dickerson, who's been on base 3 times tonight. Hit by a pitch, singled, and walked after a first inning strikeout. On 1-0 from Minaya. We'll do 1-1. Now, James Shields meant so much to the Rays, talking to their radio announcers, the fine pair of Andy Freed and Dave Wills. He said, look, James Shields, even more than some others, may have been the most important pitcher in Rays history so far.
Well, he was the leader of that staff.
Even more than David Price. They said, look, he was the guy that set that tone, as you see Dave and Andy. At least one of them's talking. That's good news.
Dave Wills on the right.
I think they're having microphone issues.
Andy on the left. Well, they can just go with the video.
A wonderful tandem that they have in Tampa. 1-2. Minaya. Foul ball. That radio telestrator is still yet to be invented.
But when it is, we're going to be right there.
Oh yeah, the capital will be flowing from this booth. Ball and 2 strikes. Minaya to Dickerson. 2 out. Top 9. One more pitch.
Tried to bury a slider and end it.
Two and 2. Top 9. Fly ball, center field. Garcia. And that'll do it. Series opener goes to the Sox. 7-1 tonight.
It was nice to see James Shields throw a good ball game. He did that, and they got enough offense. A couple of home runs. Morneau with a 2-run shot. Sanchez with a 2-run shot. And that's all it took to win the first of the final homestand of the year. So I will be right back and see you tomorrow night.
That sounds like a plan. See you then.
Yep.
Sox win 7-1. For our director, Jim Angio, producer Todd Benjaminson, associate producer Dave Ross, tech manager Mark Harper, and the executive producer Jim Corno Jr. He's Steve Stone. I'm Jason Benetti. So long from U.S. Cellular Field. Coming up next, Subaru Post-Game Live. Sierra and Bill have it for you. And you've been watching Chicago White Sox baseball on Comcast Sportsnet. Good night.